Here's Brody Brazil.
You know, there is an aspect of the A's potential relocation and existence in Las Vegas that nobody's really talking about right now, but it is something they will realize over time. And that is the cost of both building a stadium and then supplying it with a competitive team year after year. Now, in the last decade, safe to say that the A's in Oakland have been competitive. They've made the playoffs in stretches. They've had quality players, but they've never maintained it because they've never also continued to pay for it. They've broke up the team after several different iterations. Which brings us to the present. A's team president, Dave Kaval, doing some interviews lately. The first one here with the Nevada Independent. Their article said, Kaval said a move to Las Vegas would allow the team to sign high-priced players. Quote, you wouldn't invest in the stadium like that and also not invest in the quality of the product, Kaval said. So that's something that we really want to reiterate, and I think will be an important aspect as we launch the team in Vegas, end quote. He also spoke to the Wall Street Journal, and for paywall reasons, I can't show you the quotes there, but the headline and kind of the summary probably tell it all. The A's don't just want to leave Oakland, they want to leave Moneyball behind too. In an interview, team president Dave Kaval says the team hopes revenue from a new stadium will help it pay more for players than its famous cost-conscious strategy. All right, instant takeaways from those two small samples there. I think number one, it's an admission of frugality. I know the word being frugal. I know that expression. Frugality? I've never used it before. I know it's out there. But I think that's the way to put it here, that everything you just saw looks back in reverse and plainly says that they have intentionally not spent as much as they could have, or they were trying to cut corners, or cost was maybe the number one priority of what the A's were doing. I mean, the quote moving forward says we have to spend more to be competitive for the product. And look, again, you don't always have to spend to get the product. Sometimes you get youth, and youth is the product. But if you want to keep youth, you have to spend so that you maintain the product. Is it an insult to the current fan base that they've been watching now for multiple decades and have gone through wholesale changes when they weren't necessarily mandatory? And then I also want to point out here the cost versus the revenue of Las Vegas. Now, everybody's got their own projections, but certainly the A's have a potential to do partnerships, sponsorships. Of course, they have the potential to make money in Las Vegas. But it also comes at an extreme cost of spending a lot on a stadium, at least $1.1 billion. Quite honestly, probably more like 1.5 or more to get the stadium and the facility they want. Also, the fact that you need to spend on a team, which is kind of the overall point of this video, and we'll get to that in just a second. There's multiple costs here, like big costs, versus all of the different revenue, but is it that much more than you're making in Oakland, and the Bay Area, and Northern California? It's a difficult promise to keep, right? That we're going to spend more, for sure, and then that's actually going to translate into winning. How many teams have we seen this year? I mean, fans in Las Vegas eventually won't care how much the team is spending, although that is important and although that is a sign. Look at the San Diego Padres right now, the New York Metropolitans right now. Not all of those highest spending teams cash in on winning. But let me also say this. You don't have to be one of the top spenders, but the A's have literally been 26, 27, 28, 29, or 30th in the league consistently on their player payroll, and you're not going to get there either. You do have to get, I think, to at least the middle of the pack, and if we're talking about spending here, you'll see in a second, you probably have to be top 10 in the league to be a sustainable, competitive franchise year after year. I'll make this last point by saying The stadium and the team are two totally different expenses. Everybody's focused right now on the stadium because all that public money got passed with SB1 and the private money's going to have to come in, but that's just the stadium. Funding a team to the additional amount you already pay is going to cost way more over 3 decades than the stadium. I've seen plenty of nice houses that have no landscaping or no furniture. They couldn't be furnished because everything was spent on the house itself. This is a graph right here showing basically the last decade of the top MLB payroll teams, which every year it's different. I mean, it's a lot of the same players. I mean, teams as players, right? The Yankees, the Mets, the Dodgers. So that's the blue line, right? The top spending team every year. And then I should have put the numbers on the left side so you can see how much it is. But you get a general sense that there is a significant dip from the top spending team to the 10th MLB payroll team. And again, if you're top 10, you're in the top third of 30 teams, and that's pretty respectable. That's in white, the top 10, and then in green is where the Oakland A's are spending-wise. And you could see it goes up and down over the years in 18 to 19, and they thought they had a chance, and they had some young players. They were willing to go after it a little bit more. Compared to 22 and 23, when we get back to that frugality of it all. But let me show you the trajectories here. I think that's the most interesting part. Top MLB payroll team. That's a line that goes up. It's pretty steep, right? It's only going up from the last decade to now and to the future. The cost of paying for players and talent, it's competitive, right? Teams are out to get their players. It's going up. Even the top 10 team, which again is a different team every year, it's going up to a significant degree. Not as steep as the top payroll team. Like we've seen craziness in the last couple of years. But even if it shallows out, still paints a pretty upward trend as a picture. And then there's the A's, whose line actually goes downhill. Spending less now than they did 10 years ago. So I'm showing you this not to surprise you. I think everybody is aware of this. But this inherently presents a problem when you talk about, furnishing that house, getting the players and the teams you want to go along with the stadium you're about to build. It is easy to fixate on the ballpark cost, which again is a $1.5 billion estimated cost as of today. I think everybody is certainly expecting that number to likely increase. Did a video recently where I said, realistically, it's probably in the $2.1 to $2.3 billion range. It's Las Vegas. It's the 2020s and inflation and construction costs and things you're going to want to do to this ballpark. I mean, other big league teams right now, is it the Royals who are saying even their ballpark in Kansas City, downtown KC, $2.1 billion already? So how do you go to the Las Vegas Strip and do it for 1.5 and do it to, Vegas caliber and Vegas quality? But let's not get too, here we are again, getting too deep into that number. The cost of a stadium. The cost of a team will far exceed what a stadium costs. And especially when you spell it out over 30 years. Right? The stadium is going to be paid off to their plan across 30 years, so we can look at it that way. And to get the number and to show you how this simple math works, I mean, here's the 2023 MLB payrolls. If you want to be a top 10 team, you got to be where the White Sox are. Opening day, these are opening day payrolls, by the way. Things change over the course of a season. Trades happen, etc. The Chicago White Sox on opening day were on the hook for $180,611,000, approximately. 180. The A's were the last place paying team at $43 million and change. That's a $137 million difference between where the A's are at and where the Southsiders are at. So if you want to get to where they're at and where things are going in that trend, that's $137 million per year. That's $1.37 billion per decade, so almost close to the estimated cost of the stadium just for one decade. And by the way, this is not the entire payroll. This is that gap amount. This is that additional amount to get you to a top 10 status. That's $4.1 billion over 30 years, which is easily, at this point, twice the cost of what the stadium price is, the construction price. And mind you, this is an additional cost. This is not the base cost of player payroll, right? Because the A's are already paying 30, 40, 50, 60, maybe 70, 80 million a year. This is on top of that. And this is also, I'm not accounting for inflation here or the trend of where player salaries are continuously going up. Now, I am taking it at a large margin already, like you just saw that graph. So I'll use that. I'll factor that in to where things are going. But even if it's $3 billion over 30 years, you could build a whole nother stadium or two for that. This is the cost that's the hardest part that nobody's talking about. It's the hardest part to deliver on, to get right, and to satisfy people. The cost of a stadium is one thing. The cost of a team is totally different. And again, you can build the house, but you've got to furnish it. And the way that this is structured with Clark County and servicing bonds, they need people to go to games. And if you have a really bad team on a consistent basis because you're not paying for it, again, paying for your players doesn't always guarantee you success. But I think it at least, it goes hand in hand with being a competitor. You'll always be in the mix. You'll always be relevant. Look at the A's. After 2021, had they continued to spend on their team, Chapman, Olsen, Murphy, Bassett, add in Geloff, Soderstrom, Lawrence Butler now, Esteury Ruiz, and I get it. Some of those players came from trades that the A's had made. You get the point in the picture here. This was an exact scenario where the frugality of the A's put them into being a really bad team, and take this team that's on pace for close to 120 losses this year, put them in Las Vegas, and if you think things are going to be different just because of the scenery, sports fans are sports fans. And I believe Assembly Speaker Steve Yeager said that Vegas doesn't tolerate losing. Well, spending's not going to guarantee that, but it's going to keep you a lot farther away from that. And the question is, after paying for a stadium and everything else, is this even a possibility? What was quoted in those two articles. You made it to the end of this video. I appreciate that. Thumbs up down below. That'll help me out. Also, subscribe to the channel so I can definitely see you back here next time.